The sane and sensible thing to do would have been to say no. When I was first presented the opportunity to become the editor-in-chief of the Tartu 2024 evaluation report, then what I should have done while being in that room and getting that offer would have been to listen, smile, nod, and then very politely and very charmingly decline. And this for a number of reasons. Firstly, as you can all imagine, it is very difficult to write a unified and comprehensive story about a project as vast, as fast-paced, experimental, and in the best possible sense, as bizarre as the European capital of culture. Suddenly you are face to face with a dilemma trying to figure out whose story and to what extent is worth preserving in the written word, and more importantly, whose isn't. Now, as you can all imagine, seldom does this make the decision-making process easier if there is no right or wrong answer. On the contrary. And in addition to that, you will most certainly be followed by looming expectations when you get an offer like this, because we tend to look for a secret formula in the cultural sector that would say, if you invest X amount of money in culture, this is the amount of money you're going to get back. Almost like calculating dividend yields from the stock market or gains from your pension fund, should you enjoy this kind of luxury. Although we know that these kinds of calculations are based on market speculation, probability, not certainty. Yet we need something solid to hold on to, something to reference back to, even if the data may have huge gaps in it or its meaning may change by just very small contextual alterations. This desire to make sense of the future while relying on the past, even if the data may be unapplicable, makes us human. So I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't try to assess the economic impact of the culture and creative industries. We certainly should. But it does force us to ask how to measure something as broad and vague as culture, as we even struggle to define it. Now, that's a lot of existential questions for a potential job offer, don't you find? But I think if I had been interested in doing tasks that are easy or tried out before, I don't think that I would have joined the Tartu 2024 team in the first place. I have a feeling none of us would have. For whatever reason, call it a need to prove something or a lack of sufficient hobbies, we decided to say yes to a journey filled with sleepless nights, sacrificing our nerves and whatever remaining youth, for some less, for some more, to a year filled with culture. And so the question while writing this book wasn't even anymore, can you write a story about it, or is it possible to organize a European capital of culture? Of course it's possible, always is. But the question became, was it worth it? Or even put more broadly, is it worth it, and should we still bother organizing European capitals of culture in Europe? So, as Beatrice told, we did some digging in the numbers, and this is what we came up with. Of course, this you already know, but we're just repeating this for the people in the back. Tartu 2024 was the biggest cooperation project in South Estonia to date, bringing together a quarter of the country. This means 20 municipalities, around 4,500 team members, roughly the same amount of volunteers, and hundreds of politicians, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. But what's even more interesting is that around 60% of the local policymakers agreed that the title year helped to strengthen the cooperation between cultural event organizers and businesses in South Estonia. And even furthermore, 73% of the local respondents of the South Estonia Creative and Cultural Sector Survey agreed that the title year had a positive impact on South Estonia. So not only did this large project prove that we can organize huge initiatives in a country where sometimes even saying hello to your neighbor might be seen as an outrageous act, depending on where you live, but we also showed that this can be done in a way that a lot of people feel good about it. Of course, the degrees of agreeing it may differ, and it would be a very scary place to live in if everybody would like the same cultural expressions, but the trend is positive. And that is significant on its own. In addition to that, as you all heard already, Tartu 2024 Foundation and the main program project teams were able to secure additional funding worth of 2.6 million euros from various international funds and support programs. Now, is 2.6 million a lot of money or not a lot of money? Of course, that depends on where you're looking at it from. Compared to bigger European countries with bigger European capital of culture budgets, 2.6 million is relatively little. But for South Estonia, this is a remarkable feat. And in addition to that, as you already saw from the video as well, the European Capital of Culture, Tartu 2024, had about 15 special products that sold more than 5.7 million units. So if every single product of those would cost about €1, which we know they did, this would mean at least 5.7 million euros of revenue that went straight to Estonian entrepreneurs. That's not little for Estonia. The main program attracted around 1.3 million visits during 2022 to 2024. And in addition to that, tens of thousands of visits were recorded in our side program. But again, these numbers alone don't tell you a lot. What really interested me was that 9 out of 10 respondents who actually visited the Tartu 2024 events found that the event they took part in turned out to be a valuable experience. So, of course, the events might have varied in quality or, as I said, artistic experience or expression, but the people found it valuable, something new, something exciting. That's what we really wanted to achieve, and it seems we didn't do too bad. In 2023 and 2024, Tartu 2024 received 5,400 mentions in foreign online media, and the mayor talked about it as well. You might think, okay, so what? You know, we were just mentioned in the main newspapers of Germany and maybe Spain, maybe even United States. Yeah, no biggie, anyone could do that. But the reason why this is really, really remarkable when you want to translate it into data is that this would have cost, as you said, 133 million euros to obtain. So our marketing team, some of them right here as well, they were able to generate for us 133 million euros worth of visibility without actually paying that money. So give props to them. Yeah, go ahead. And talking about a small group of people who did some amazing stuff was that 97 young people have graduated, the aged 14 to 19, have graduated from the youth program Tartu 2024 Extended during 2022 till 2025. This is the next generation that will hopefully make sure that South Estonian cultural life will stay relevant, exciting, and unexpected. So let's go back to the original question. Was it worth it? Of course, you're all very welcome to make your own assumptions, and that very much depends on the data that you are operating with. But from the point of view where I'm standing, I would say that the answer is yes, it was worth it. But is it easy? Our internal employee survey, as well as various stakeholder reflections, showed that a lot of people battled with burnout or severe risk of burnout throughout this entire organizing process. Difficulties in securing that additional funding, turbulent geopolicy, as well as troubles in finding professionals and keeping them on your teams for a long period of time were only some of the existential threats hanging over our heads. Of course, as you already mentioned or noticed, then the creative concept of our title year was Arts of Survival. And sometimes it seemed that the world around us was really stretching that concept every single day, throwing in a new thing, a global pandemic, a war somewhere, or for example, inflation, you name it, we had it. And this kind of mental toll that is put on people, there's a reason why we have to talk about this, because it's not just unique to Tartu 2024, it's not unique to European capitals of culture, even though it's constantly talked about. But it's something that we face in the cultural industry time and time again, almost to a point where it seems inevitable and almost self-explanatory. But that doesn't mean it has to be this way. And of course, a lot has faded now that the title year is over, but I remember talking to a dear friend of mine at the end of the title year and coming to a realization that holding a European Capital of Culture title is a lot like going through an all-encompassing crisis, but a very good crisis at that. The kind of crisis that does make you anxious, worried, doubting at times, but that also gives you an opportunity to grow, to learn, to challenge yourself a little bit more than you're maybe used to. And so, in other words, it is a year filled with growth and experimentation that, yes, we shouldn't shy away from the fact that it comes with growing pains, but also with an immense sense of achievement. So, what do we do with knowledge like that? We know that it's worth organizing European capitals of culture, or at least it was worth doing this. And we know that the people who are organizing it had a very difficult time at times. So how can we make sure that the cultural events still have high quality, large scope, but also that the process doesn't break people into bits and pieces and leave them kind of stranded, not knowing what to do next? And so what we decided to do was a very small step forward, and really more of a token of gratitude than anything else. We decided to ditch the idea of writing a very conventional, academic, sometimes maybe difficult to read evaluation report. And instead we wanted to put together a handbook, or a survival handbook. It is of course meant mainly for people who are currently in the middle of organizing European capitals of culture, who are thinking of bidding to become one, and of course for those who want inspiration for creating other large-scale cultural events like this. And so the book that we wrote is titled Tartu 2024, The Story of Survival, or Tartu 2024 ellujäämise lugu. And because we do work in the cultural industry, and there are no rules in culture, only sins, and the capital sin is being boring, then we decided that to kind of honor our creative concept, Arts of Survival, and to honor the concept of the Survival Handbook, we tied each of the chapters in this book with one universal survival rule. Hopefully this makes it easier to remember, and also positive side is that should you ever get lost in the woods, your probabilities of surviving then after reading this book are quite high. And so we wanted to bring together quantitative research and qualitative feedback, objective descriptions of processes and very subjective memories of them, so not just what we did, but how it felt, and also to talk very honestly about struggles and burnout, as well as achievements and recognitions. All in all, we've also added some checklists and rules. Of course, you don't have to follow them. You don't have to do anything except pay taxes and die eventually. But we did think that if you follow these guidelines, then it's much higher probability that you're able to create high-quality events, and then also do it in a way that puts humanity first. And so this book is a reminder that every achievement comes with a price. But it's also a reminder that the goal of survival, because this is after all what we do in the cultural sector, try to survive, the goal of survival is not survival itself. The goal is the act of truly living, as a nation, as communities, as individuals, through culture and shared experiences. And so we did try to do our homework, and I think we've succeeded with 400 pages. And we did try to do the mathematics on this, but it seems that you can't put a price on living, can you? And you can't fake the feeling, no matter how hard you try. Instead, this kind of an event gives you the courage to go on, the confidence to say yes when a sane person would have said no, and it gives you hope for the future. And if we don't have that, what do we have? So I want to congratulate all of you for surviving the 2024 year. We couldn't have done it without you. And I also want to say to those who are currently preparing for their title year, happy surviving. It's going to be way more intense and way more fun than you initially imagined. And to all of us, I want to say many, many more European capitals of culture to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hanna. Please stay here for a moment. So if you would have the opportunity to do one more study on or data gathering for Tartu 2024, resources unlimited, let's say, in theory, then what would it be? What would you really like to know?
I don't know if I would like to do any more research because I was not doing this alone. I was doing it with my team. And the superhuman feat that it took to kind of sift through all of this data was immense. So actually the question would be, can we measure something less? But I must say that it was an absolute kind of event on its own to read through the feedback that people gave to the European Capital of Culture and to different events. That was an opera on its own. Let's see if we can make part 2, the 500-page version of all the event feedback. I think I would like to dig into more of that to really see if you can see some kind of patterns. So maybe that with unlimited resources. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Hanna Simona Allas.